What messed you up mentally? Not on the same level as the traumatic ones here, but a TikTok or reel somewhere a few weeks ago where someone described how in 100 years, most of us really will have left no lasting impression. Someone else will be living in our home. All my possessions will have been thrown out or donated, sold, or simply lost. Nobody will be interested in my photos and videos. Even to relatives, any memories of me will be a curiosity at best. My job is service-based tech, and likely none of what I've done to date, or will do in my entire career, will be remembered, or even used / needed. This has me really thinking that all the things that have been important to me probably aren't. I'm trying to see it as a reminder that it's now that matters, and making the most of relationships and experiences is what is truly important. And I am way more relaxed about work now, but I still can't shake the dark side, which is an overwhelming sense of insignificance. If this comment infects anyone reading it, I'm sorry. First love / fiancé became a multi-millionaire. We broke up prior to his becoming super wealthy, and I married the rebound guy and had kids with him. Advice: don't marry the rebound person. We divorced, I remarried, and 2 years in, he had a massive brain hemorrhage and is now partially paralyzed on his entire left side. So I've been his caretaker for the last 14 years. My oldest kid has mental health issues, so I've also had to help raise grandkids. And my mom never saved for retirement and now lives with me because my brother, who's blown through any money she ever had, will barely give her the time of day and refuses to pay her back. Christmas morning of 1983, I was 5. I woke up with all the excitement a child has on Christmas morning only to find that my dog had died. My dad was an early bird and woke to make coffee and walk the dog. After coming back, the old boy went back to bed and passed away in his sleep. The worst part was, my father always insisted on burying our pets at a pet cemetery, and we had to hold our dog for 2 days in our shed as the cemetery was closed and the ground was frozen solid. Education. Expectations made me question my life, and my vision scores were what determined how valuable someone was as a person. I was viewed as a prodigy at first, but when I started to decline and realized I can never be a top student, and the doctor people believed I'd be is how I became suicidal, it made me view my life as nothing but being worthless. After all those years, I still haven't recovered from it. Not even a bit. It also damaged my social skills because I was always compared with others. Watching a truck hit a car at the age of 19, I witnessed the whole thing. This was a gigantic truck. The force it hit against the car flew in the air literally from impact. Something about the car flying has always fucked me up and taught me life is short. You don't get to understand the why. Now I got a fear of trucks. Having Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS, when I was 22 years old. It damaged the nerves in and around my waist, which led to a severely weakened bladder and reduced sensitivity. As I have aged, it has got worse and worse. I was lucky in many respects because a guy next to me in hospital died of it while I was recovering. Scared the shit out of me. Now, when I get a reaction from a heavy cold or vaccination and run a high temperature, I can't help but wonder if the GBS has returned. Found out a few years ago that when I was a kid, I was diagnosed with what was then mild ADD, and my parents decided it was a phase I'd grow out of. I only found out after my mom passed. While I developed a ton of coping strategies over the decades, I've always struggled to achieve or complete anything. Unable to fit and led to severe depression, alcoholism, etc. It's all the same root cause. I can't help but wonder how much better my life would have been if we sought treatment back then. ADD had such a negative stigma attached to it back, then I'm sure there was some shame involved in that decision too. Don't get me wrong, I know my parents loved me and believed they were doing the right thing. I just think they made a bad decision, and I've suffered because of it. It's hard not to be mad at them. Bad diet and no exercise. 3 years ago, I weighed over 300 pounds and had bad type 2 diabetes and coronary artery disease. I couldn't tie my shoes or put on socks for about 10 years. I was in constant pain. I got winded walking across the room. I hated what I had become. Doctor told me I was going to have a heart attack. I began dieting and exercising. So far, I've lost over 100 pounds, and I feel absolutely great both physically and mentally. I go to the gym 6 days a week and no longer need treatment for diabetes and heart conditions. Live strong. A family friend got lost driving at night and called saying that she didn't know where she was and water was pouring onto the truck. The adults looked for her all night and didn't find her. They thought she had driven into the river somewhere and were searching it. The next day, my grandma, who was watching all of the neighborhood children while the adults searched, decided to take us to the lake to get some energy out. We saw the tail lights in the water. Naive little me dove in to try and save her. All I saw was the body. I never want to see that look on someone's face again. Growing up in a chaotic home environment where both parents never really exhibited love for each other. Just fighting, screaming, etc. Also watching my father struggle with alcohol and anger issues. Parents were emotionally unavailable and immature. Due to my home environment, I grew up feeling like I did not matter. Nobody will listen, and major self-esteem issues. Slowly working through and healing myself one day at a time. I'm getting better. Watching too many rom-coms as a child. It gave me the idea that love should be emotional and a guy would chase after you until the ends of the earth. Until I grew up and saw the ugly truth that real relationships are boring and no guy would pull that SHT I saw in the movies. I wished I could have just spent my time watching documentaries and other real-life stuff, lol. Found out my partner of 10 years, whom I was married to, was cheating on me with an ex-girlfriend who was married with kids. Took them to our most sacred place and lied to me about it. It's been almost 3 years and I'm writing a book about it, but turning it into folklore horror. Also, their life is kind of misery now, so karma. Debt. I got in pretty deep debt when I was very young. The amount was probably $10,000, but at 18 in the 90s, it seemed insurmountable. I managed to claw my way out and vowed I would never again put myself in that situation. Unfortunately, now I'm like the guy who's found dead in the desert with a canteen full of water. I have a considerable amount of money saved, but I still have anxiety about not having enough. I provide for my kids and for my wife, but I don't actually splurge on anything for myself. I get triggered anxiety spikes by any non-recurring bill that's over like $200, medical bills being at the top of that list. My kids and my wife, who objectively has a bit of a spending problem, think I'm cheap. Stepmom put me out at 8. Mom lied to me at 14, told me I was going to live with my dad, and it was his idea. So when he picked me up, he and my stepmom were surprised that I wasn't expecting to go home after the weekend. Mom basically told him, "It's your turn, I'm tired." Dad put me out at 17 6 months before graduation. This is the summarized version. I bounced around between my grandmother and those three. It's left me with a fractured sense of self, very little guidance, and a floundering self-esteem, having trouble believing in myself in adulthood. We only talk when in the one column. But man, aren't we proud of my half-sibling on her way to becoming a doctor? At 34, I really don't like any of the people I call parents. A serious blow to the head from a lacrosse ball. I was hit by a D1 player shooting full speed, and the ball caught me on the orbital bone. I was unconscious for a while and almost lost my eye. I was no longer the same person and dealt with depression, impulsiveness, headaches, serious memory loss, and temporal lobe epilepsy for 5+ years. The ball wreaked havoc on my right temporal and frontal lobe. The seizures were daily and terrible. Fortunately, they stopped, and I am slowly returning to my former self. When I was 4, I was intensely afraid of the dark, and one night my mother decided to put me to bed, and as I was sleeping, turn off every light in the house, and simply leave to go visit her friend. Naturally, I woke up. For the next 11 years, I barely slept, woke up every single night as if it was programmed into my subconscious, and couldn't fall asleep again until I felt it safe, so I slept under her bed on the floor in her closet to keep guard in case she left again. Growing up with insecure, risk-averse, over-conservative and jealous family members, partners, colleagues, and friends. I missed incredible chances for growth in my 20s due to this environment mindset. As incredible as it may seem, there are people who do not really want you to have that promotion, to go with new people, to be your best version. Spot the wrong people around you early. The psychological roller coaster of my last job. I was there for nearly 2 decades and the process went / business owner took a chance on me, turned into a wonder kid / was put on a pedestal for talent / made me a target for anything / everything that went wrong / became company scapegoat / had a bit of a breakdown from being convinced I was stupid, unproductive, lazy, unambitious, anything to divert attention from management failings. Had to get therapy to function. I changed careers 10 years ago, and it was the best thing ever, but I still have scars from that whole ordeal. I no longer stick my neck out for leadership roles. Don't want to get in that situation ever again. When my childhood best friend died, she was 22. Cancer got her. When you're that young, you think you're invincible, that you can make it through whatever. That was a canon event that made me really realize that death was a thing, and it can happen at any time to anyone. It made death tangible and concrete to me. Hers was only the second funeral I'd attended in my life, aside from my grandma's. She had a whole life planned out, and none of it happened. I remember going to help her mom and aunts clean out her desk at work, and she had a list pinned to her cubicle of all her life goals. I will forever have grief and anger that she never got to accomplish them, and it's no one's fault. At 14, my best friend went off to the Mayo Clinic at the end of the school year to have surgery to correct a birth defect in his heart. There was a year-end party at our school that my mom dropped us off to. When we got out of the car, she said to him, good luck with the surgery, sweetie. See you when you get back. This struck me because I hadn't really thought about it before that. To me as a kid, it was no big deal. Plus, he was super excited and not nervous at all because he had always been pretty limited physically, and the surgery was supposed to improve that. At the party, we got separated, and his mom picked him up early, and I didn't get to say goodbye. No big deal. He'll be back in a week, I thought. 3 days later, my mom got a phone call from his uncle. When he went in for the surgery, the defect was way worse than they had anticipated, and he didn't survive the surgery. Could we please let his friends know? We spent the next few hours calling 15 to 20 families the news. I've never really gotten over it, 34 years later. This just happened last week. I'm a type 2 diabetic, got stomach flu, couldn't eat or drink for over 48 hours, started puking that included the important red stuff, called ambulance, got a hospital, stomach flu, caused me to go into diabetic ketoacidosis 4 days later. I still feel like shit and get tired by walking. This is so sad. I am so sorry. My husband had older twin brothers. David was killed by a rich drunk driver that never got even a ticket. His twin lost his identical brother, and you can imagine how that would affect you. I was lucky enough to know David, since my husband and I are childhood friends. He was the nicest young man. He even took my BFF and I skiing, and we were 5 years younger and so obnoxious. This is so scary because it could happen to any of us. All our hopes and dreams gone just like that. Alcohol sucks. I'm sorry for your loss. Those twins are lucky to have you. It crossed my mind from time to time. If one of my siblings dies, we'd adopt their kids, or if my wife and I died, if any of them would adopt mine. I hate that you actually are loving that scenario. The randomness of life is rather terrifying, but I've also been so lucky so far. I could have been born in a slum in Brazil, or as an HIV baby in Africa, or never have been born at all. Enjoy every day that you can. Make others happy when you can. We will soon be joining your brother for the eternal sleep. At least we had some time to feel some love and joy. Sometimes I fear just driving to or from work because it's not me I feel like I have to worry about on the road. It's everyone else because literally you could be minding your own business and some drunk or distracted driver will absolutely change you or your family's lives in an instant. I see it on my local news almost every day where I live. In 5th grade, I was friends with a kid in 4th grade. Kind of casual friends. Didn't have class together, so hung out on the playground. I defended him a few times when other boys tried to bully him. My friends were tough guys too, so this kid being on our side was huge for him. One Friday, he told us his family was going on a trip that weekend. We didn't really care at the time, so not much was said. On Monday, he wasn't at school. No one said anything, teachers, students, no one. This went on for a week. I finally asked a teacher that kind of liked me, and she said I'm not supposed to talk about it, but I know you were friends. He and his entire family were killed in a car accident over the weekend. I didn't know what to say or how to feel. I was 12. I still think about it all the time. Whole family just gone. Please see someone to find coping mechanisms to get you through the dark periods. You and your son deserve peace. I hope you find a way to fill your days with positive energy. Maybe being around the criminally insane is not the best for you. You have a heart of gold to stay strong like this for your son. That depends a lot of when it happened. Example, I had unrestricted access to the internet when I grew up. Well, I was limited to 30 to 60 minutes of internet use when we had dial-up and ISDN, but later when we got ADSL when I was a teenager, we had no restrictions. I just wasn't very interested in gore, shock, or NSFW content. I was happy looking at trains and later window blinds themes for Windows. Oh, and game cheats. I had unrestricted access to the internet back in the Wild West days of 2003 or such, but it wasn't until I got my first laptop at 14 that it had an effect on me. If it really fucked me up, but being on 4chan and such during my formative years definitely gave me a certain worldview that I otherwise wouldn't have had. Luckily, I had my typical the internet is my personality days when I was young and grew out of it eventually. But it definitely didn't help being an introvert, and all since I didn't feel the need to really connect with my peers at that age, and thought I was smarter and more mature than most, when really the stuff I was consuming was typical edgelord rhetoric. He wasn't my best friend, but he was there my whole life, and I valued him so much. He did something to hurt me, and I was an angry young adult who couldn't forgive him. His last message to me was, "I wish you a great day, and hope you can forgive me one day." I messaged back, "You should rather wish me a great life because that day will never come." He killed himself half a year later. I'm still messed up about it, and wonder if things could have been different had I been there for him. I don't know if this is really helpful, but it helped me with the thought. Some random guy in a completely random situation once said something really nice to me. It has been almost 14 years, and I still think how this compliment has boosted my confidence and makes me smile when I think about it. It had an impact, and so with small gestures and the occasional nice word, even to random people, I try to create a small impact, a small imprint. It is not much, but it is something. It started a little domino chain that I like to keep going, and hopefully in 100 years or more someone might do the same. That feeling of insignificance can be depressing or freeing. Standing in the shadow of the Canadian Rockies at Lake Louise, the mountains looked like they had been ripped from the soil, all craggy, raw, and brand new. And me, a little ball of muscles and blood that will last for less than a century. I realized I'm a speck, a pinhead in the world's timeline. So why not do what I want? Why not dye my hair purple and be outrageous? Why not have raw, unadulterated fun? I'm a speck, it doesn't matter what other specks think. There's millions of us. And that was quite freeing. This is something I've heard in the past, like when you pass a cemetery, just think about how old some of those gravestones are, and how there's no one left to remember them. Everything most of us do is insignificant, and if anything, it's helped my anxiety because nothing I do should be overthought or will matter in 100 years, so just live life and mistakes won't matter for long. The house I grew up in got bought by some yuppies who spent nearly $1 million on renovations, and there's nothing left the same now. My elementary school and high school both have been torn down, but the names were transferred to new schools that look nothing like the old ones. Not sure how they missed my middle school, but given time, I guess. Both military bases I was stationed at got BRAC'd and are now civilian airports/commercial business parks. The dorm I stayed at in college has been torn down and is now a parking lot for the church next door. TBF, it was an old motel the university was leasing, but still the best place to stay on campus. I suppose it's no wonder I don't have a lot of personal possessions or furniture. No point. Edit, the middle school has been renamed, but not torn down, and the old name is now in use across town at a new school. Meh. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half-sunk a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal, these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare the lone and level sands stretch far away. Percy Bysshe Shelley. The only thing I can say is this. You may have been just as miserable had you continued in the first relationship. It's a really bad hand, but I think we end up where we should be. You're a hero to your husband and mom, child and grandkids, who would have nothing without you. Nobody in their corner. It's a lot on you. But you should look in the mirror and remember just how incredible a person you are. It's hard, you're struggling, but you're amazing. Never forget that. You're surviving a hardship that many couldn't. That makes you a stronger person than most. Don't ever doubt how incredible you are, X. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.